Three, look out now. The sideline, forget about it. This baby's over.
Oh, my goodness. One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
And most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan, on the football field.
Another block. One more, he's gone. Touchdown, no flag.
Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Here's the run again. Donovan Edwards. Whoa, can they catch him? No, Donovan Edwards again. Go down.
Alrighty, welcome back to another episode, Scarlet and Blue Show. Great to have everybody here. Garrison, I don't really know what we want to talk about today. Not much going on in this preseason, especially in the college football world. Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, man. Got a little conference realignment. I don't think that's that big news at all. I don't think that's anything crazy. The coaches poll, the top 25 came out today. A bunch of coaches who pay guys to do their work for them. So, I guess it's not too much, but we can probably talk about for a couple minutes, I guess.
Yeah. Could be a short show. No, man. The big news, of course, that's sweeping college football. That's changing, not even college football, just the college, collegiate athletic landscape is this conference realignment stuff. This is absolutely insane type moves. The effect that's having not only on college football but on college sports as a whole is tremendous. And I know there's a lot of people who've already talked about it, and so we'll touch on a little bit of those things as well, but then really more talking just about how it affects Michigan and Ohio State and the Big Ten too, which of course a lot of this is revolved around teams joining the Big Ten. So Garrison, jumping off the deep end here, what are your initial thoughts on things?
I'm not all crazy about it, but then again, I'm not mad. I'm not upset. When USC and UCLA first joined, I wasn't really. Honestly, I wasn't upset about that at all. I'm looking forward to playing USC. I'm looking forward to playing UCLA. Oregon and Washington, that came out of blue. That came out of nowhere for me, left field. But at the same time, I'm not mad. I think those are two really cool programs. Specifically because of I think their stadiums are cool. I think their fan base is cool. I think their brands are cool. I think that they do bring value to the Big Ten to an extent. I think overall, I think it's time that I think right now it's time that the college football kind of just be under one hood and do what the NFL does. I really think it's time for that. Maybe 3 super conferences, but maybe you get to 2, do a bunch of pods. I think it's time that the networks take over. I think go ahead and go just do what the NFL does. The game is already supposed to, I guess, it's kind of like I don't want to call it an internship, but it's kind of like an internship for not a lot of kids, for kids to go to the NFL correctly. I think college football should go for the big change. I think they should do what the NFL does and let the networks control everything when it comes to just who gets to be played where, all that good stuff. I think that I'm happy. I'm okay with it. I'm accepting it. I'm cool with it, man.
Yeah, nothing about that was convincing there. I'm happy. I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. Well, all right. Yeah, I tend to agree with some of those things, disagree with some other things. Mm-hmm. I meant to preface this at the beginning. We talked about this at the end of last episode, but we actually cut it because we want to try to keep these episodes, somewhat concise, because Garrison and I could talk for hours and hours on end. And so we try to avoid that for the sake of viewership. But we actually talked about this. We kind of hit on the 3 areas where there's the regional aspect. So you bring in the Pacific Northwest, you bring in Seattle, right? And then you, of course, bring in the big brand in Oregon. You bring in, of course, the collegiate kind of stud teams. Oregon's obviously been really good at football recently. Both of these Pac-12 teams have made the playoffs, which is a big thing. And So there's that piece of it. And then when we originally talked about it, we talked about Stanford and Cal coming too. And reports come out today, which I guess I'm glad we didn't release our conversation before because so much has changed between now and then. But there's reports today that the ACC is trying to sneak them in, or maybe it was the Pac-12 asked the ACC to take in Stanford and Cal. So there's a lot of chaos going on there, and stuff has changed so dramatically. But that is some of the things that we did talk about. Garrison, the one thing I don't maybe love as much as you do is the idea of becoming the NFL. That kind of hurts me, and I'm trying to still figure out why. Is it?
So you're hurt by something without any reason?
I'm hurt because I love college football the way it is. Because I think you're right. I think everything you just said is inevitable. It's going to happen. When we get to this point, the beauty of the conferences and a lot of the tradition in those areas is taken away. I look at the 2021 Michigan football team, and that season was an overachievement in so many ways. I mean, we came off the candy cane fake season where we played 6 games, won 2.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches, many wanted him gone, came back, won the Big Ten, win the conference. Winning the conference will mean the world, right? But it's almost in many ways not a big deal because there's going to be 2, 3, 4 conferences, and maybe there's eventually just going to be 2. I don't know. But you kind of lose some of that. And that's a small thing, but it's stuff like that kind of makes me sad. That's going to go away.
I mean, all right. I don't disagree with you on that, but let's think about this. How many football leagues, and I'm talking from high school to pros, okay? I'm talking every level, even Canadian football. Tell me the league that doesn't have a playoff system. 10, 15 years ago. Name the leagues 10 years ago.
None of them, right? That don't have a playoff
Only
system.
one did. Only one.
Yeah, aside from college, of course.
Yes, D1. D2 has it and D3 has it. Canadian has it.
FCS.
Yeah, FCS. Yeah, dude, exactly. So I mean, we're literally catching up to the rest of football. That's what D1 football is doing right now. They're catching up to everyone else. They're late to the party, basically. 15 years late. So I'm not bad. I understand what you're saying when it comes to the pageantry and all that. Trust me, it'll still be there. I mean, the only pageantry I actually care about is when we play you guys. We lose Penn State, which I do love. I love playing them. But Bryce, I've been calling for this for a while now. I don't even know why the hash marks are different than the NFL. That makes no sense to me. So I mean, I'm okay with the college football feeling more like the NFL. The only problem is that they need to figure out what they're doing with every other sport in college. They need to figure that out.
Yeah,
that's the big talk.
That's one of the key things where you have men's baseball, for example. You know, they play more games than college football does. And if Rutgers is playing, Rutgers has to go out to California, has to go out to LA, and you got to play UCLA, USC, and you can make those, West Coast trips. You can make those regional trips where you're going to play them maybe back to back or whatever. You kind of schedule accordingly. But my goodness, man, that's a lot of travel for these kids. For football players, if you play half your games on the road, then that's 6 weeks where you're traveling.
Notre Dame's done that for a long time.
But the difference being is that's 6 weeks, 6 games compared to what these other sports will play. Even basketball.
Oh yeah. Bro. Think about it this way. Ohio State basketball could. There's how many have 2 games in a week, right?
Sometimes 3. Go Sunday.
We have an away game on a Monday, or at Oregon, and then 2 days later, you have a basketball game at Penn State. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, man, like I understand they're saying, "Oh, we gotta make sure these kids we're not making them like pro athletes." this is the point where, and I know they're specifically talking about football, but this is the part where I thought people don't understand this. You are still technically a student athlete. If you don't have those kids, especially I show basketball season really in other sports because they play more games, but it hurts them as a student. It does. It really does. So I mean,
yeah, it does. It does. And kids are going to get, I think kids are going to get burned out from it a lot of ways. And I think you can sit here and say football and basketball being revenue sports for most schools, you can justify that more. But I mean, if you're playing water polo or you're playing soccer, it's not the same. Like SEC baseball maybe is a little bit different, right? But that's SEC baseball, maybe Big 12 softball, maybe, but for the most part, those kids are going to get
Big
punished.
12 softball belongs to the SEC now, Bryce.
That's true with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But Garrison, let me just take a moment here to call out how just stupid the NCAA is in all of this.
Continue, please.
Garrison,
is this a conspiracy theory?
Well, the first one wasn't a conspiracy, so nor is this one going to be a conspiracy theory. Okay. But where is the NCAA in all of this? Where right now you are creating a situation and a circumstance where non-football, non-basketball players are getting screwed. Like, it's going to be fun. Like, no doubt. Like, it's going to be fun to travel with the team.
I laughed.
But these players, I don't think a lot of them are flying first class or flying private, or not like how the football team flies, right? They're going to probably fly coach, and maybe some have a PJ, or some have the private Delta airline, but like they're getting screwed over here. So where's the stupid NCAA and all this? Where are they protecting these students? No, they're not, because you know why, Garrison? It goes back to my original point. Who are the most powerful people in college football?
Coaches, ADs.
Coaches, ADs, commissioners. Greg Sankey says, let's do this. We're doing this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Of course, commissioners, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what the NCAA wants to say. And we're seeing that here. We're seeing how they have absolutely no power and they're not doing anything to help. And so while I'm going to sit here and say, hey, this can be a good move for football and yada, yada, I look at the NCAA as a body and think to myself, you guys are just sitting there with your thumb up your butt and doing absolutely nothing right now because you can't, because you have no say in this. I'm done.
Dude, that's why I said, Bryce, I was kind of hinting towards that in a way. Dude, I think very soon football is going to break off. I think for every other sport, you need the NCAA. You need them. And no one wants to admit that, but no, you need them for the rest of the sports.
You do for non-revenue sports, absolutely. You need a body, but you don't for football. And what about the Washington State?
So who's it go under then?
Football? Make your own body. SEC and Big Ten can.
Do you think that? So do you think there should be multiple people that run the football teams, or one singular person?
I think one governing body.
So you don't think it should be like that? All right. Think like this. Let's say the commissioners of the school, the ADs. I'm sorry, the ADs of the school are like the owners, right? Do you think there should be one commissioner over college football?
I think it could work its way to that. I think right now you'll see the conferences pull the strings, which is what they're doing. And then eventually it's going to get to the point where they're like, hey, we don't need the NCAA. Like, that point could be tomorrow, but we'll let this play out and eventually get to that point. And then you'll be one entity. You'll be the new Division I college football. They'll call it whatever they want to call it. But then eventually, whatever that becomes, we'll need an overseeing body. And so
I do have two things that with this new landscape, there's two things I would like, though.
Hit me.
I do believe that based on your record of the year previous, your ranking and all that, just like the NFL, your record from the previous season dictates your new schedule.
Ooh, that's fun.
It will dictate that. Another thing I would like to see.
Well, hold on. What do you mean by that? Do you have a harder schedule based off the success that you have?
Yeah.
So Georgia's definitely going to play Alabama. They're definitely going to play LSU. They're definitely playing Tennessee, no matter what.
You pick whoever the better teams are from the last season. You get not all the best teams, but you get the tougher portion of it.
That's a good take, Garrison.
You get the like just like for Ohio State or Michigan. Michigan would have the tougher portion of the Big Ten schedule this year instead of Ohio State, which we have.
Yeah. So,
but and then this other thing.
Okay, hit me.
Because
that was good. That was a good first one. I like that.
Oh, I think you're gonna like this one too. I really think you're gonna like this one because they're gonna separate the group of 5 teams and the P5 teams. Okay, in terms of football conferences, you can play your way into the Power 5 and play your way out of the Power 5.
Relegation.
I think if your team is crap for 2 years, 2-3 years, and there's another G5 team that's out there, kicking butt, doing really well. Like honestly, I think like App State, they would have benefited from what I'm saying. You get moved up, the worst team gets moved down. I don't think you just for the sake of history, I don't think you have to keep teams as Power 5 just because of the name on their helmet. I just don't.
Yeah. So relegation, you're saying?
Yeah.
I think that's a tremendous idea because it's going to be just like soccer in Europe where the big clubs aren't going anywhere because more often they're not. They've got the money to not be the bottom 4. And I think the same thing will apply because you're never going to see Michigan or Ohio State drop down. They think college football can't allow that because they're too big, but they never would either. Although if it's Garrison, if it's 2008, we might have some problems.
Bryce, that's the richest public university stop.
Yeah, they're not going to go anywhere. But that's a good take, man. I like that. I look at the 2007 App State team. That team would have beat LSU probably. That's how good that team was.
Huh?
Back in 2007, dude, that was
what makes you
think?
Okay, see now you're doing it again. you're just talking for the sake of talking now.
So, Garrison, 2 fun ideas. I love that. I think relegation is one that a lot of people would be open to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other idea, the scheduling, I think that's a fun idea as well.
Yeah.
Because the TV money is going to be there. I don't understand why you have to schedule out teams 10 years. Like, why are we playing? I don't know who we're playing in 2034, but we're playing somebody and that's already scheduled. Like, come on. If Georgia and Oklahoma can cancel out that game, you could easily add a game on like that. So
yeah,
that was good ideas. So we did get some questions though from some of our popular listeners, and they want to know about how these realignments are going to affect Michigan and affects the Big Ten specifically. The Big Ten is notoriously known as, not even notoriously, they're just known for being the Midwest. Yeah. You bring in Rutgers, Maryland. And by the way, can we just talk about the move that 2014 Rutgers made? Can we just acknowledge how brilliant of a move that actually was? If they were still in the Big East or ACC today, there is zero chance the Big Ten's picking them up. But instead, they had the foresight or with the wherewithal, but they're like, hey, we got to get in now. And now they're sitting pretty.
Yeah. So when we were talking about the delegation, I was mostly talking about Rutgers.
Yeah, your plan there would definitely
get them out of there. But yeah, it was. I mean, it worked out for Rutgers and it worked out for the Big Ten. You got the East Coast. You're right under New York. Yep. So I mean, I think it worked out for Rutgers pretty well. It did.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't really pay attention to that, maybe Rutgers, Maryland joined so that the Big Ten could get the DMV market, and then they could get the New York market in the same way that USC, UCLA joined to get the LA market, and then Oregon and Washington joined to get the Pacific Northwest market. Yeah. So all money plays. But dude,
Maryland too.
Yeah. What did I say? Yeah. I thought I said Maryland with the DMV. Yeah, maybe I didn't say.
Oh, you said okay, cool.
Yeah. So Maryland's a big play there as well. So the question then is, right, geographically, how does this affect the teams? And I think we talked about that a little bit, but just the distance that these guys are going to have to travel. Again, for football, it's not that big of a deal because they're going to fly they're Jets anyways, but man, I feel a little something for water polo. Or
I have a question for you.
hit me.
Even with like the way the Big Ten is going to be next year, does it really hurt to get rid of divisions?
No, I think you could do pods, you could do groups, you could do.
I think you could easily separate right at Nebraska and Iowa.
Yeah.
I think you could easily, and I probably was kind of add Wisconsin to it. I think you could do the West and have you would have USC, Oregon, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those are UCLA. Those are really Washington. Those are really good programs. And I think that then the West could beat the East in football in the championship game.
Oh yeah, well that completely changes the West because the teams that you're thinking about beating the East are the ones that joined are going to join in a couple of years. Yeah. Which we'll talk about some of the opponents coming up over the course of the weeks, but I think the West is going to be a little more powerful this year. But yeah, you're right. It feels like most of the teams are going to come from the pack. Yeah, man. I think, and then so let me ask you, how does that shape the conference championship? Like, say you do groups, or maybe you do divisions. You do the West and the East, but maybe you do the West, you do the East, you do the North, the South, or the Central. You could call it divisions, and then do like a 4-team mini playoff. Because the Big Ten championship is going to get interesting. Or do you take the top 2 teams?
I think at that point you got to take the top 2 teams. Because I mean, as of right now, they're saying there's no division. So I mean, your schedule is your schedule, and you better make it through there without 2 losses.
Yeah, and think about that too. If you have a playing game or like a playoff for the Big Ten championship, and then you have to go play a 12-game playoff, that's a lot of extra football.
There's no way they would do that.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting too. That's a great question that was asked.
Because we're at 18 teams.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have 18 teams, right? You have a 9-game conference schedule. No, I think that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I think you can find 2. I think you can find the 2 best teams after that. But you would have to make that schedule even all around. And
you have to play. You made a good point. You have to play the 9 conference games. You have to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I mean I would love to watch. Have to see Ohio State go out to Seattle and have a game. And those games are going to be probably prime time. So those aren't going to start at 10
we were supposed to in 2020.
No, Michigan. You were supposed to go to Oregon. Michigan.
Oregon. Sorry, Oregon.
Yep.
But which I was really happy with. I was fine when they were going there.
I know. That. I think we both got off pretty easy because we're supposed to go to Seattle.
I mean, Bryce, we made it to the national championship. I don't know if we got off that easy. Maybe you guys did, but
we made this. Oh, you see. I just don't even acknowledge that season. If you could pick one team out of the pack, the new pack 4, we'll call them, to be your rival, who would it be?
Oregon.
Feels like the natural one, right?
Oh man, no. I mean,
More than USC.
Oregon over USC, of course.
All right.
I mean, man. So this is what you got. Because Ohio State has a lot of schools do, but Ohio State has a huge Nike partnership with Nike. That's why we get a bunch of our jerseys done. We get, I think, every year for the Michigan game, LeBron sends us new Nike shoes. It's probably gone unseen, but there's been plenty of times where LeBron's logo's on our jersey. Everyone knows LeBron. I think he has a lifetime contract with Nike. So there's that. I think we have the 2 most eye-popping jerseys in the Big Ten. Like, I mean, just in terms of the Scarlet bright red with that bright green, they're eye-popping colors on the field. I think that works out well. And then also, man, like I said before, I would call it the Buck Duck Bowl. I think it's a great name.
Yeah, Buck Goose. Yeah, Buck Bowl. Buck Duck Bowl.
Yeah, man.
That's why we get paid the big bucks, Garrison.
Exactly.
I know they're watching.
So let me throw it back your way. Who would you choose? I know who I would choose for you guys, but
Well, I would say SC. That feels like the natural one.
mm-hmm.
Just because it's two storied, like historic programs, two classic uniforms. You'd love to see that. But I tell you what, man, that Rose Bowl between USC Penn State, that was a good looking matchup too. So if I'm looking at pure aesthetics, that was pretty good. But I have to go with USC just because.
I think Michigan USC is I think the Big Ten should push that as a rivalry. They should.
Yeah. And we'll put that poll. You did a good question today. You put it up on Twitter. Who would be the better rival? Or what was the question? Who would do better numbers?
No, yeah, I think I asked who would do better numbers. I solely picked those two games specifically because of this. Of the four, Ohio State and Michigan are the two largest fan bases, correct?
Correct.
But then you got the West Coast with USC. With the Penn State side, you got the East Coast. So then, of course, like I said, I think USC and Michigan would be a really good rivalry game. Ohio State, Penn State is kind of one, but it's not. By the way, who do you think would do bigger numbers? I personally think Ohio State, Penn State would. And that's simply because people in the East Coast watch more football than the West Coast does. But that's not to say that the Michigan game and USC wouldn't do insane numbers. I think year in and year out, outside the Ohio State Michigan game, those would be the two biggest games most watched games played in the Big Ten if they played.
Yeah, because right now you have the fresh shine of the Michigan USC game, so people would say that one probably. But if you took this in totality and over the next couple decades, what game would do the best numbers? And it'd be pretty darn close. It'd be pretty darn close. And you got the regional aspect where I don't know how far away Columbus and Happy Valley are. I don't think they're that far. But I think if you brought in the two major fan bases, I think it would do better. And I say Michigan, USC would. But man, it would be close. It'd be close because you guys had some classics, man. Penn State, Ohio State. I wish that was a more celebrated rivalry. I don't think anyone views it as a rivalry outside of Ohio State.
Only us two teams do.
Yeah. No one else does. And yet there have been some great matchups.
Oh man, I've seen countless great Ohio State Penn State games, man. I mean, because there was a time in your guys' dark era of bad football. There was a stint where Penn State and Michigan State were probably our rivals. And I don't mean that we cared more about them than we cared more about them than we did you guys, but they were giving us the toughest games, man. Like somehow Mark D'Antoni was beating us. Couldn't tell you how. But
I'm critical of D'Antoni. I'm critical of his rise. But what he did, man, beating Urban twice is a feat. And I'll give him his flowers.
No one else in the Big Ten did.
No one else did. And it took a crazy block kick for Franklin to do it. That had to be returned in Happy Valley at night during the whiteout. So add some points to that score. It's that was we'll talk about my criticism of the Michigan State rise and how it's a little overinflated at a later date, but that'll be it.
That's disgusting. But also, man, like we were speaking about rankings earlier.
Well, real quick, before we get to that,
go ahead.
What the heck do you do? How bad? Let me rephrase that. How bad do you feel for Washington State and Oregon State?
Bad.
They're screwed. They're done. They don't have a home. They got to join the WAC or the Mountain West. Is the WAC still around?
Yes.
Yeah. So they have to join. Well,
I'll tell you what, Bryce. I'll tell you what. If I was Oregon State, I might be okay with it. If I was Washington State, I might be okay with it. For years upon years, your program has been getting dog walked in the Pac-12 or in the Pac-10, which isn't saying much. This is an opportunity for you to be the big boys on the block. This is an opportunity. You're specifically with Oregon State, you're going to go out this year with DJU, a really good. I think that's going to be one of the most underrated teams in the nation this year. Oregon State. I think they're going to get a lot of wins this year. Uh, Maybe it helps you on the recruiting trail, helps you keep some of those kids on the West Coast or like in the area. Join the WAC. Go be the big boys. Nothing wrong with that. And play your way into the Garrison Gaddy football league. We'll kick Rutgers out.
It's something to think about. The last thing I'll ask too on this, and we'll go talk about the rankings and some other just news around our teams. But the question I think has to be asked too: at what point will teams raise their hand and be like, "This has to stop. This has gone too far"? And before you say anything, I understand that whoever does that is turning down millions of dollars in TV revenue. But if you're a school like Northwestern, Stanford, Cal, Berkeley, these prestigious schools, Vanderbilt even, where you have an endowment that's larger than any TV money you're going to get. At what point did they just say, we're not doing this anymore? This is taking away from college sports. We don't need part of this. Because I think I would be surprised if they walked away, because that's a lot of money to walk away from.
Yeah.
But this is also getting crazy in many ways too. So food for thought. I don't know if that's something that would happen, but it makes you wonder, just given the speed of which this is going. All right, so Garrison, sorry I cut you off. You were talking about some news that came out today, some exciting news where, we saw some just rankings here. We saw honest rankings. We saw, I think, fair rankings. How do you feel about your Bucks being where they are?
They're right. I would put Ohio State ahead of Alabama, okay? And the only reason I would is because how about this, bro? I'll ask you as an outside person, okay? Do you trust Ohio State's quarterback situation more or Alabama's?
I'll answer your question. Ohio State. I trust Ohio State's quarterback situation.
Okay. Do you trust?
But I trust Nick Saban, and I trust Nick Saban.
Do you trust Alabama? Huh?
I trust Nick Saban more than I trust Ryan Day, and I trust whoever Alabama's DC is more than I trust Jim Knowles.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people trusted Nick Saban more than they trusted LSU last year. Other loss they had, but that didn't matter, did it? Why? Because you don't have the Jimmies, you don't have the Joes. I think Ohio State. I think a lot of Alabama's talent is really young right now. I think when Ohio State, I think Bama was 9% blue chip. Ohio State's 85. So they're right close to each other, but I think Ohio State has more upperclassmen that have had more playing time, and they're probably, and I think their starting units are more talented. So I mean, I would put Ohio State there, but I'm not mad at them at 4. I think that's a great spot to be at right now. Voted by based on who's voting. But how do you feel about Michigan being number 2?
I don't think you can put them ahead of Georgia. So I think it's a good spot to be in. Didn't even think twice about it. It's the coaches poll, so I'm trying to take it seriously, like you said. Mm-hmm. But I think we know who votes on this. And so, yeah, I think interesting that Michigan got no first place votes. I think Ohio State had 1.
I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time for the people in the back?
We're Michigan, consensus
no
number 2.
No one voted for Michigan first place in the nation.
We're consensus number 2 going in. We got the most.
I just think that's hilarious. That's all. Like nobody thinks you are the best team in the nation.
It's okay. Yeah. So one person voted for Ohio State. I wonder who that was.
Mel Tucker. Already.
So yeah. Well, lots changing, man. Lots. I'm sure by this time next episode there'll probably be more news with who's shifted. We'll see what happens with Cal and Stanford. Hopefully we answered all of the questions here, and college football is changing, and
it's changing. It's changing.
So I know you and I, there's been I think there's been a decent amount of camp news too. Like I've got some things to report from Michigan's camp. I'm sure you have a ton of things to report from the Buckeyes camp, and I really want to I really want to go over some stuff. That's how excited I am. Because I think there's been some fun headlines just to talk about. Nothing serious, because both coaches are not going to share anything too in depth. But there's enough to really, I think, at least you and I go at it about. So we'll be sure to do that next week. We obviously felt like we had to address this realignment stuff, talk more about it, and yeah, let us know your thoughts too. If there's anything missing, or there's anything else that you're noticing or hearing, let us know, and we'll be sure to talk about that. Garrison, anything else?
No, man. Just like you said, we'll cover what's going on in fall camp here soon. There has been a lot coming out lately after the first couple days. Outside of that, man, no, look forward to seeing what's going on for the rest of the week, going into next week. Also, I'm sure there'll be something going on in the college football, because it seems as though I think 17 days left. Or there's a lot. I think it's 17 days, man.
Oh my gosh, is there? That sounds right.
So the first college game, yeah.
Beautiful.
So I think there's going to be a lot of things coming out here soon, and I'm really excited to see that.
Play that Post Malone ESPN intro right now.
Oh, go ahead and
Send it out.
Go ahead and do it.
And we'll see y'all next time.
The Caleb Williams Show.
Let the games begin.
Everybody waits in